You're listening to The Rest of Us on the Rest of Us Podcast Network.
In the sense that I really like golf.
Yeah.
And like it's one of those boring things where you're like, well, we can push the envelope, and by which I mean not actually push the envelope, just make a bunch of stupid golf videos. And like I like the concept and like I guess you could say brand motivation of like getting people back to doing hard things, which is all the golf is, right? It's like the grind, and then enjoying the fact that like grinds are fun and it's like a game, and just go have fun, like stop, relax, right? Like you don't have to play by the rules. And actually I think in talking to my mentee yesterday, that was the big thing for me. He was talking about a Black Mirror episode, and he's like, yeah, there's all these rules and aspirations and stuff like that, and I go, but you always have the option to not play. Like you can just not play the game, right? Like whatever that game is, you can go, I'm just going to go do something else, right? Like golf, I'm going to play not golf, I'm just make up my own rules. And so like I would say that's option A. Option B is like the same kind of meta definition, right? Like the same motivations, just in a different context, right? So is it more like, do we want to create a podcast that just talks about stuff and things, which is really broad, of which the subtype is golf, or do we want to use golf as a vehicle to talk about other things?
I don't know enough about golf, right?
Yeah.
To say let's have a
Give a shit, yeah.
hole in one, podcast about golf. And how
Yeah.
much which I'm fine with learning. I like to learn, and
Right.
so like I like the idea of golf as it relates to, like the leadership or self-improvement or so I guess social problems. So maybe the focus can be common everyday things
Stuff.
as they relate to the betterment of people, of yourself or each
Yeah.
other.
That I do like, right? So like I like your abstraction. What is cool, I think about how you craft stories, right? And you have to have characters in stories, and you cast the characters, and so you can even say, okay, I'm going to make this storyline of this dude always relates that storyline to golf. You can relate it to Dungeons and Dragons, or like character development and storytelling, right? And then that gives us also the option in later worlds to like have guest speakers, right? Because it's like, well, this is how you and I view worlds. It's almost like games, right? Like I like the idea that like life is a game and we have to enjoy it, and we can kind of like play by whatever rules we set. It's like Shakespeare said, right? Life is a stage and we are all merely players, or whatever he said. That's probably not the exact quote, but like something like that, which is basically
I
like,
get what you're saying.
yeah, right. And so like enjoy it, right? That I actually really, really resonates with me, because I think that like that is the lesson that I always took away from the military, right? Like we all die in the end. And it's slowly what I think both drives me nuts personally, is that like it's a bunch of people that you just want to grab. It'd be like, you die, like just go have fun, man. Like if you want to go play golf, go play golf. Why are you so fucking stressed out about it? Or, like do these things that you see as fun, and like enjoy the almost the childhood part of it, right? Like we lost our sense of wonderment. And then the second part of that is like, right, like all of the other lessons that get taught from it, right? Like kind of that, like do it because it's hard, right? It's kind of like Kennedy said, we do this not because it's easy, but because it's hard. And we could use more of that, I think.
I like that. One of the topics I really like, kind of that we've touched on a few times, is the gamification of things to make them more palatable to people, and how everything, like there's no new concepts, it's just we're getting more creative in the way that we get people to accept older concepts. Like we're talking about NFTs. NFTs are not a new thing, and it, like anyone that's ever played an MMORPG has had an NFT at some point. It was something in game that was assigned to only their character, and they could, it was a commodity that could be traded in game. And in fact, in World of Warcraft, they that was really popular to sell items in the real world for real money in the game.
Yeah. So to abstract this, right? Because now I'm running down two parallel lines. I really like this framework and storyline because, like, from a meta perspective, again, what I like about it is that we are basically focused on the same objective, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
we have two different perspectives about the same goal, and that is, like, in my opinion, the power of actual storytelling and what this could be. Call it gamified, right? Like, it becomes, how do we gamify this and how do we enjoy this? But like, we're telling this, not the same story, but we're marching towards the same goal. And
Yeah.
because we agree that the goal is to, like, not do things that suck, right? Stop doing things that aren't worth doing and do things you enjoy. Some of those things include the adversity of doing it. Like, that is a goal that outsizes us, and I think that would be powerful. So back to what you were saying, and actually this would be good too, because I don't know a ton about, like, I've never played World of Warcraft, and I know Dungeons and Dragons in passing, in the sense of, like,
Mm-hmm.
played it in high school, but like, I don't know enough about it. So you'd have to teach me, and I can teach you about golf, right? And it becomes its own thing
Yeah.
in economics, and we both have probably a little bit enough knowledge to be dangerous, but I think that's anyway. Carry on. So I really don't know what you mean about, like, World of Warcraft.
Okay, so World of Warcraft, you know what obviously you know what it is. It's a game. It's massively
Yep.
multiplayer online role-playing game, but there are other games like that, like RuneScape, and I play one that's called Neverwinter. Um, and but there's stuff that exists
Well,
in
I
the
play Always Summer. No, I'm
there
just
you go. That works, yeah.
kidding. Sorry.
There are items within the game that they're rare items, right? So
Yeah.
people will get it and onto different sites and say, hey, I'll transfer this item to you for X number of dollars. Just send me money
Oh,
on
right.
PayPal, and they do it, and there's a whole economy based on it.
Is there anything that tracks it? Like,
It's
um,
tracked in game. It's and like so like games become really neat proxies for real world economies. And
yeah.
also, there was an example in World of Warcraft specifically where there was a disease, and it originated in like a boss fight. It was vectored out of the boss fight on companion like creatures. Usually at the end of a fight, all of the buffs would be wiped, but when they coded it, they didn't wipe the buffs on the creatures. So they brought it out of the game and it got out into the rest of the
Oh,
server. It's crazy. It's crazy. And it
that's
was a totally
interesting.
unintended side effect.
Yeah. But yeah, it's almost like the human element. Like, meaning, like, I remember watching a YouTube video of what is now the White Wedding from Game of Thrones, right? Where, like, same deal. It was World of Warcraft, and,
Mhm.
like, somebody had died in game, and somebody went and just killed everybody at the funeral. They were doing a virtual wake, and they, like, killed. And I don't know
Oh yeah.
which one was first, right? But, like, to your point about, like, kind of the almost not metaverse, mega multi-dimensional verse. That's fascinating. One of the things is, I read a really good book many years ago about how we got to now, and it talks about kind of these big concepts, almost abstract concepts, that drove us to where we are today, and almost like the butterfly effect and chaos theory and stuff. But the big part is, like, one of the things that always stuck to me is that innovation happens in clusters, and sometimes the cluster is really tightly bound, right? Like, we all know the story of the phone, where it's Graham Bell and somebody else, right? Like, one of Bell beat him to the patent office, and that's who we know of. And we forget, like, I can't think of his name, right? And that's
Yeah.
we forget guy number two. And so sometimes it's very tight like that. And then sometimes it's just talking about how we can come up with the same 5 or 6 different ideas in a cluster. And I think we forget sometimes that we've only been at this for like 100-ish years in technology, in terms of the interwebs, right? It really only came about, like, it came about a longer time ago, but it's only been embedded into our society. I would say in the last 10-ish years, since 2010-ish, with the advent of social media.
I guess, we look at these technologies that kind of change the way we do things. How it was only what, 66 years from the Wright brothers to when we put someone on the moon.
The space program is always an interesting thing. We had a common enemy, which means it's really easy to align resources and align objectives, right? Because we had to beat the Russians at that point, and then we had a common enemy, which meant we could have a shared goal. And now I think one of the big things that's lacking, especially since the collapse of the Soviet Union, is that we're kind of all unfocused because we don't have anything to focus on that like we can agree is a threat,
Yeah.
um, both good and bad. And I think we've almost cheated it back to like the video games point where we introduced this idea that you could just go buy, in effect, cheat codes, XP or coins or whatever, like that digital currency of the game was. And then as a function of that, we got in this idea that you could be a one-man army, right? That I think the big things that we've steered clear of that made society great as represented in things like MMORPGs is you couldn't be good at everything, right? You could be a mage or a healer or a tank, or you could have these very specific roles, but as a function of your very specific role, you had some very specific weaknesses and you had to work as a team. And like to me, I think that's one of the big things first the military always taught me, like team and unit cohesion, and then just simply like we've turned more inward and we've gotten our arms wrapped around this concept that we can do everything by ourselves. And it's left us, like, in my opinion, we've lost a lot of like the macro social effects of that, right? We've lost our ability to be a community, and we've lost our ability to like have opinions that differ from ours. We've lost our ability to like keep focused on the main goal. And now we see so many things as the enemy because we don't have a singular enemy that we can focus on, right? So everybody's our enemy. And in that way, the world is very small, and that sucks. Like that's a stressful world to exist in. And I think that's where, unfortunately, a lot of us exist today. Well, so yeah, I guess I'm a believer that the idea that like our brains are squishy and malleable and they're always adopting,
Yeah.
right? And so like for and against how we have evolved, like and this is just my, I guess, non-doctoral opinion on the matter. We can only accept, let me try to figure out how to phrase this in the right way, because it's total like the goal is obviously not to generate pseudoscience, but it's not pseudoscience. If we see everything, if nothing is stressful, then everything is stressful, and we can only like accept and learn to adopt to the thing in the point in time that is our biggest stressor. Meaning, like, if the biggest thing that I deal with on a day-to-day basis and my only baseline for stress is that I can't eat lunch at noon and I have to eat it at 1 p.m., and that's the greatest stressor that I've ever endured, I could see why that's stressful for me. But the other flip side of that coin is that we now cater to the idea that everybody has to have lunch at noon instead of being like, yeah, sometimes it's stressful, right? Like it's okay to be stressed out. It's okay not to get your lunch on time. And it's okay to like, it's on you to learn to improvise, adapt, and overcome, and learn how to basically not only overcome these adversities, but understand that they're not adversities, right? Like face those head on, as like Stoics used to talk about. The idea that comfort is a slow death, right? And so discomfort is something that we have to embrace. And now everything is so comfortable that like nothing is uncomfortable, by which I mean that everything is stressful. Like I think of at least the veteran community, and it's not even to say that we haven't all endured some level of trauma or stressor, but the idea that we see veterans or combat veterans as like this removed part of society. And it's not to say like PTSD and actual mental things aren't issues that need to be treated, but the other flip side of that is that it can teach you a lot, right? Like we devalue the lessons that are taught by the stressor and overvalue the regression toward the mean, that everybody has to be a certain way, and we have to discredit what people have gone through regardless of their background, and we don't account for all of that. What makes the United States great is that, in any great team, is that you can all pull together and go, we all have diverse backgrounds, and this is stressful to me because, and this is stressful to you because, and somebody else is going to see probably both of those and be like, this isn't stressful to me. And then like, because there's somebody first in that group that it isn't stressful toward because of their own experiences, and they have the experiences to lead through it, they can then shepherd the team through whatever that mission is, and you can trade hands because you're all equal. But the second that we say, well, the person who is the most traumatized or the most this or the most that is now the kind of our guidon carrier, that becomes like really scary in a way, because this person is not capable of doing this, and there's nothing wrong with not being capable of doing this, but we should not be like, you would then need to lead us because you are our weakest link. It's like kind of the opposite, right? Like we have to work together and use weaknesses as strengths, which is not what we do today.
So what's the solution then? How do we round the corner between what we do today, which is excluding those with weaknesses, to exploiting those weaknesses as strengths? I don't know if exploiting is the right word, but
yeah, I know what you mean. Like, I think the lesson that I learned, I'll get to your solution in a second. The lesson that I learned from immediately having to go from invisible injury of PTSD to, in effect, the same injury that's now visible with a service animal was how much differently people will treat you, because now you have a visible versus invisible injury. It is the responsibility of the individual that needs help to ask for help. It takes strength and courage to be like, I cannot do this. And it takes self-awareness to say, I cannot do this. But it's also not incumbent upon everybody else to say, well, how do we help you, right? It's like learning to adapt and overcome, I guess. You go, well, I can't do it this way, so I'm just going to find another way around because I'm still going to accomplish my goal, right? I still want to go golfing. I couldn't go golfing because it stressed me out because I had to deal with a whole bunch of people giving me advice that I didn't ask for, right? And then I had a service dog and she couldn't go. Like, adding that just added fuel to that fire, because then they were giving me advice that I didn't ask for, and they saw me as injured in a way, right? So they're giving me extra advice because in their minds they were helping me. And they were actually making things worse because it was me going, I'm fine, right? Like, yeah, I got my own issues, but I'm not asking you to account for my own issues. Like like completely composed. And it actually made everything worse versus just like making it incumbent upon individuals to just state what they need help with, right? It's like kind of as bad as it is, and it's not self-serving, but staying focused on our own strengths, and then understanding that it's okay to like disagree, and it's like stop worrying about what other people think, I guess, is the short answer.
Thanks for tuning in today. Please like and subscribe, and don't forget to turn on your notifications so you can hear all the latest from the rest of us.